Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Edgar Wiggins, your host for this program that is dedicated to providing you with practical and useful information regarding mental health issues and needs. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in this country, and unfortunately, the third leading cause of death for young people ages 15 to 24. Every 14.6 minutes in this country, a person ends their life by suicide, leaving behind a minimum of 6 survivors. Today we have with us 2 courageous individuals who have come to share their story, 2 mothers who lost their children to suicide. I want to introduce Lisa Lithicum, welcome to Mental Health Matters, and Sarah Taggett, welcome. Sarah, can you talk about the circumstances surrounding the death of your daughter?
On September 20th, 2008, I got the phone call that no parent really wants to get. And the phone call went like this. Hello, is this Katrina's mom? And I replied, yes. And the person on the other end said, this is Megan's mom. Katrina is dead. She shot herself. And it was that blunt. And then subsequently we found out that truly she had taken her life. At the time of her death, she was 21 years old. She was a senior at Michigan State University. She had 11 credits left to graduate. She was going to be a third-generation female graduate of Michigan State. It was a happy time, looking forward to all this. She was looking forward to possibly pursuing law school or graduate school. She loved school. If you had met her, you would see this beautiful, blonde, curly hair with a brilliant smile, smart, funny, kind. You would have no idea that behind this smile was this deep pit darkness where most days was very painful for her to live. We thought that she was just a moody teenager, that she would outgrow this. She had trouble sleeping, she had anxiety, she was a perfectionist, and that fed her anxiety, but what we didn't know is that fed this depression. She was a prolific writer. We found a lot of her writings afterwards, and one of the things she said is, I'm tired of living inside my own mind. And we figured that she was suffering for 6 years. As her mom, I like to think that I knew her best, but I didn't. Neither did my husband, neither did her brother. Her friends knew her better. And they, but her moods and her drinking and her drug use to mask the pain, they just thought it was kind of normal. It's their normal. And so after she died, my husband and I are pretty analytical people. And so we did a lot of research on how this could happen. We sent our daughter off to our alma mater. How could she, this beautiful young girl with this future, incredible, how could she do this? And what we found out is that she was suffering severe depression. She had a low week that last week, and she was just spiraling down, and everything was just getting more and more stressful. She was studying for the LSATs, she was studying for her classes, she was trying to find an internship for spring semester, being with friends, and it just was too much for her. And we didn't see the signs. Looking back, we do. She said to me that week, she said, I wish I could just walk by a building and have something fall on me. These very, very out of the way types of statements. But she told her friends that she did want to die. She didn't want to be here. She did want to kill herself. And that week, a gun became available. She researched on the internet how to kill herself, where to get a gun. And by the time she had researched it, just 2 days before she died, I had to call and tell her about her cousin's stepdad, he hung himself. And we figured out that it was 3 hours after she researched on the internet that I called her. And I knew she was having a bad week, so I said to her, I said, honey, I got to ask, is this something you're thinking about? I didn't mention the word suicide. I didn't mention the word mental illness. I didn't mention any of that because they weren't in my vocabulary. I never thought she was at risk. And she said to me, no, Mom, I would never do that to you. And meanwhile, she had researched on the internet. The morning that she died, she finished a paper called The Misconception of Suicide, 8 pages, where she argues that suicide is the final alternative for somebody that has done everything possible who has depression and nothing is working. Much like when you have a coma person and the person in a coma, everything's done and they're going to be a vegetable for the rest of their life, you pull the plug. And she had to write this paper for a class and argue a point. She had a second paper that she had started. She showed the friend the start of both papers. The friend told her not to finish the suicide one, said the other one would be a little bit better. The suicide one was just a little too dark. And then she also wrote, she didn't write a note per se. She left a document on her computer to her brother. And it included and said, please don't hate me. I can't explain this. I hope one day you'll understand that this is what I have to do. And then, of course, she gave him sisterly advice. That was the only letter she wrote, and thank goodness she wrote that because my son at the time was 18 years old, starting his freshman year at Virginia Tech, and he, for the last 3 years, has been just a very big struggle. But that note has made him feel that she did what she thought she needed to do, and it was nothing he did, and that she truly loved him.
Thank you.
She truly loved him. So that's our story. I mean, we found, that her friends really knew, but they didn't know they knew. In high school, they thought she had a drug problem, and their way of dealing with it was to say, we're not going to be friends with you anymore unless you change. And I should note that her birth name is Katrina, but we nicknamed her Kara. And so...
Thank you, Sarah. Lisa, can you talk about the circumstances around your son's death?
Yes. Jacob was a very energetic, fun-loving, just a wonderful boy. He enjoyed life. He actually was the happiest he'd ever been. He was very active with his church. October 25th started out like any other day. It was a Saturday. His 17th birthday was the following week, and so we were planning for his birthday party, and we had gone to get his hair cut, and he came home and he just said, Mom, I'm in a mood and I just need to take some time for myself. And very normal in our household. It's how he was brought up. You can have any mood you want, but take your time to do what you need to do. After several hours, I went up and woke him up and told him he needed to come down and eat. And I could just tell he wasn't acting like himself. Jacob loved to push buttons. He was the life of the party. He made people laugh, and he made people laugh a lot. His goal was to see how far he could push you and then just completely crack up, and you couldn't help but laugh with him. But he was just off that day, and I remember asking him, I said, Jacob, what's wrong with you today? And he said, Mom, I just don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know. And so I said to him, if you would go upstairs and put your clean clothes away, it would make you feel better if you'll move. Being a mom, you try to, do positive things. And so he went upstairs, and I heard this bang. And in the past, when he was asked to put his clothes away, that for young boys anyway requires opening the closet door and throwing everything into the bottom of the closet and closing the doors. About 30 minutes later, I went upstairs to check on him, and what I discovered was the clothes had never been put away. He had gotten my office chair and tied his belt around his chin-up bar and hung himself. So as I rounded the top of the steps, there was my precious child hanging. And he made no phone calls. He made no notes. He hadn't told anyone. He was a no-sign suicide. No one saw anything. Teachers would call me and they couldn't believe it was him. The pastor of our church, they were all just in such shock. They said, he was the poster child for the church. And it was just unfathomable. It was unfathomable. They worked on him for about an hour and they finally did get a heartbeat back. So then, 24 hours later, was the realization that even though he was alive on life support, he really wasn't there. He had gone without oxygen too long, and so then I had to ask the doctors to remove his life support. And we turned life support off at 9 o'clock on the 26th, and at 9:15, he was gone. And, I always tell people, I wish I had known. My biggest regret is I didn't know that no-sign suicide was a possibility. I didn't know that there was something that obviously was bothering him. As a parent, we're supposed to have eyes in the back of our head. We're supposed to have an S on our chest. We're supposed to know what's going on with our kids. And I was doing sales at the time. I took him to school every morning. I was home when he got home from school. And I sit and I say, why didn't I know? Why didn't I know? But I didn't. And it's just no parent, on top of having to bury your child, no parent should have to find their child in any form of position where they've committed such an act of taking their own life.
How have you coped with this loss?
The first year, I was totally numb. I knew he wasn't home, but I wasn't sure where he was. And it was hard because Jacob was my only child. It was just the two of us. I'd been a single parent for 15 years. The second year, the reality that he was gone and never coming back really hit home. And I was just absolutely miserable. The third year will be this year. Well, and actually the end of last year, I ended up, because of the stress and the emotional loss that I received, I actually ended up having to have quadruple bypass surgery. My heart just gave out. And, this year I'm starting to do better. My faith, I tried support groups, and I'm not saying they weren't good, but I have a very strong faith. And I have not been to a support group that was faith-based. And what I found was I needed that. That my faith is what carries me. My faith, God's grace and mercy, is what has allowed me to move on. And to people sitting out there hearing me saying God's grace and mercy when my son committed suicide, they may find that odd.
I think that we're going to give you some time to talk a little bit more about that when we come back, but we need to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Nice. Yes, go! Yes! No! Oops. Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy.
Works every time.
Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.